Hello, everyone. This is Nina Collins from Revel. This is our weekly recording of our podcast, Raging Gracefully. And this week we're in conversation with Lisa Heffernan, one of the co-founders of a really great site called Grown and Flown. Grown and Flown it started as a Facebook group, I believe. I'm going to let Lisa tell us a little more about it. When we originally at the Wolfers started as a Facebook group, What Would Virginia Woolf Do? We were very aware of Grown and Flown as kind of the really big Facebook group for women whose kids are leaving the nest. And I've been very impressed for a long time with what Lisa and her partner have done. And their business has morphed into, as I understand it, more of a business around college admissions. I think we all struggle with these communities for how to monetize and how to, what becomes our raison d'etre or whatever. And for Lisa, it seems to have grown more into the college direction. So welcome, Lisa. And I would love it if you could just tell our audience a little bit about Grown and Flown and your own story. What is why?
The why is pretty simple. Like so many other people, so for very much the same reason you started the Wolfer. We start these things because we're looking for them and they don't exist. And when you look for something and you think you want it, you figure other parents would want it. The thing that didn't exist was content around parenting teens and college students. So at the time that I started it, I had, I think 2 in college and 1 in high school, or 2 in high school and 1 in college. And there was very little content around the very complex issues of parenting kids as they get to the years where they're leaving home and while they're in whatever that first step is after they've left home. So we started as a website, actually. At the moment, we have 700 writers on our website. We have published thousands and thousands of pieces of content. If anybody writes, let me know, because we pay all of our writers. And then we started a Facebook group because I saw a button on Facebook that said, do you want a group? And I thought, sure. And I pushed the button. I think we have about 230,000 parents in our Facebook group now. And that's the community where people discuss everything. Your kid's gotten a DUI, your kid is come out, your kid is trans, your kid is lost, your kid is depressed, or you want to celebrate because your kid's got a great prom dress. So it's everything from the celebrations, a community that celebrates all the wonderful things that are happening to us as parents of teens and young adults, as well as the problems and challenges that we face.
Yeah. And people can really go and get advice, which is so important, because I think one of the challenges with having teenagers, I've often found, there's a lot of shame around talking about the difficult stuff, right? Your kid has to go to wilderness. Your kid got caught shoplifting. And we need support, but we also have to respect our kids' privacy. So it's really kind of challenging, I think, for people to talk about this stuff. And you've created a forum where people can.
It's really challenging. So from the beginning, we posted anonymously for parents because some of the most difficult problems, as you say, they really violate the teen's privacy. And that's sort of not okay. So Facebook luckily gave us the functionality so that now people can post anonymously themselves, which they do all the time. And, in our own world, how many people do we know? We know 70 people, we know 50 people, we know 200 people. I don't know how many people, but so many of the things that we're experiencing, we probably don't know anybody in our real life who's experienced them. But when you come into a community that spans the country, you will find when your kid is caught cheating and you think, okay, I'm the only person who's ever had a kid caught cheating. You come into the group, you post it anonymously. Hundreds of parents will share with you what their experience was, how their kid grew from it, how the kid learned from it, what the repercussions were, and how they wish they had parented through this moment, which might help you parent through this moment.
So much helps you parent through this moment, makes you feel less alone, and you learn so much. We both were so in the same space, so we've seen firsthand how much it helps people. So that's amazing. Yeah. So you created this group to talk about these issues. How did you morph into the college space, and how much would you say your business is defined by that space now, by the admissions space?
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges that parents face is around the college issue, and they face it around helping their children with the whole process of finding a list and creating a list and applying to colleges. But obviously the biggest thing is paying for college. This is the second biggest expense families have after buying a home. And how much you should pay, how much you should borrow, whether you should borrow, loans, merit aid, every aspect of paying for college is highly complex, highly technical. And to be truthful, people were exchanging a lot of misinformation in our group. Parents would come in and ask about college, and then other parents would, with the best intentions, tell them things that were either not true Or far more likely, we're outdated because things change so quickly. You and I would have said, oh, well, of course you have to take the SAT. You're not getting to college without the SAT. Most schools are test optional now. So things change really, really fast, and parents were giving each other outdated information. So we started a second community with experts. So parents aren't giving each other the information. The experts are giving parents the information. Once a week, we have a live session with an expert covering a particular topic. It can be paying for college. It can be creating a list. It can be visiting campuses. We've done
Is this a group on Facebook that people can join?
Both on Facebook, and it also exists on a platform. So if you aren't on Facebook, you don't want to go on Facebook, you don't have the time, you can't go to the sessions when we hold them, everything exists in parallel on a platform. You can watch everything we've ever done. We have about 70 live videos at the moment. You can also ask questions in the group and get answers from experts. And we're really careful to make it clear to parents that we're looking for answers from the experts because they do this every day. Many of our experts are actually former admissions officers. A couple of them have been current admissions officers. So they live this every single day. And they can
get people work for you full time? No, I guess not.
No, they don't. I run the whole back end of everything. And then I have a whole panel of experts that we rotate through. So we do one session a week live, but then parents can ask questions during the week as the questions arise.
That's amazing.
Basically, to this point, there have been two ways to get admissions information. One way, well, there's three ways. One way is just to go on the internet, and who knows what's true and what's not true and what's dated.
And it's so overwhelming. There's so much information.
So overwhelming, can't find it in one place, and much of it is inaccurate. So that's a problem. It's hard to tell what's accurate, what's inaccurate. The other is your school counselor, which all students should work closely with, but many of those school counselors have as many as 500 kids that they're working with. Really hard to give kids personalized attention, really hard to give your family financial information.
Yeah.
The other end are private counselors who are unbelievable, fantastic, highly trained, and unaffordable for almost everybody. And there's nothing that sits in between. So
that's so interesting. I hadn't really thought, I mean, it's true in my community in Brooklyn where I raised my kids, a lot of people hired those really expensive private counselors.
And by and large, they're excellent.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they're excellent. And I didn't use them because I felt kind of like it was so gross, like offended by the whole concept. I feel like, okay. And in my case, I had paid for my kids. We had paid for them to go to private school, and they were all, I felt like, okay, if they can't figure out how to get into college, like there's something just wrong with the system. And my kids did okay. But a lot of people do pay those private counselors. And we used the school counselor, but didn't think they were that great particularly. So that's interesting. You found this niche that really is in between.
We're trying to go where most parents are. If your kid's in private school, you're probably okay because those counselors are more likely to have 30 or 40 or 50 kids. Mm-hmm. They're unlikely to have 500 kids. Mm-hmm. Private schools have the resources to hire more counselors and they have smaller classes. So what we're trying to do is sit where most people sit, whereas they can afford a small amount of money. The program is $20-something a month. We've just changed the price, and I'd have to look again. But if you go for 6 months, it's maybe like $25 a month kind of time. That's an amount of money that many families can afford. $25.
Yeah, that seems very reasonable for real, accurate, up-to-date advice from an expert.
Live, and you will have 4 live sessions in that month. You will also have access to all of our previous live sessions, and they're recorded and labeled, and you know what the topics are. And when you want to watch the one on merit aid, or you want to watch the one on filling out the FAFSA, they're all sitting there for you. And most parents can't begin to afford that private college.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And you can go on and ask questions. Mm-hmm. So, and typically people stay with you, I would imagine, for like 6 months. Do they sign up around this time of year?
Yes, they sign up around this time of year, and they stay with us usually until they know where their kids are going. So for some people, that could just be next spring. Sometimes we have parents of sophomores who come in early, particularly if they have complex financial situations. They know they need to do a lot of planning up front.
Yeah.
And we're able to give them the advice and some.
Yeah, because it's super complicated, the financial aid situation. Yeah.
There's the FAFSA, there's the CSS profile, there's merit aid that people can appeal. There are ways, if your family needs merit aid, and many families do, they're in that situation where they make too much to get need-based aid, but they cannot afford the full price of admission and housing and board. So a lot of families find themselves in a situation where they really, really need need-based aid. And that depends where you apply, how much you're going to get. And you can determine a lot of that ahead of time. So your child can create a list which will very much weigh towards the schools that are likely to be most generous with your family when that's a need that your family has. And that's where a lot of middle income families find themselves. So that's why parents sometimes need to start this early. Even if the student doesn't need to start till 11th grade, parents need to think about some of these
Start
things.
strategizing a little bit. It's an amazing service that you offer. How many people do you serve a year? How many families?
So over the last year, we had about 1,000 families. And we can have more. We just restarted it. We had this a couple of years ago, and Facebook actually shut it down because, anyways, we were part of a beta that they did, and they shut the beta down. So we restarted. We've just been going for about a year now. So we have an amazing library of content, and people stay with us about a year. Sometimes they pop in the summer before senior year because they realize things are getting a little bit. They're trying to get their kid to do their essays. They're trying to get their kid to start the application. It's not happening. So they join us then for about 6 months.
And what are some of the trends you're seeing with college applications since COVID? Like what are
the biggest issue is the test optional issue. And for many students, this is an absolute godsend because ACT and SAT tests just are not everybody's bailiwick. For some students, they're an easy hurdle that they have to get through. For many students, they're really, really challenging. So the fact that almost all, I shouldn't say many, a very, very large percentage of schools are now test optional. The goalposts are moving constantly. Every week you hear about schools that are going back to tests or permanently test optional. It's all a moving target at the moment. But a very large proportion of colleges are now test optional, and that is benefiting a lot of students who found those tests really, really a hurdle for them.
Yeah, the tests suck, but that seems kind of overwhelming to me. Like, how do people now apply to many, many more schools? Like,
yes. So this is that's the plus side of it. The negative side of it is it's allowing students to apply to schools or encouraging students to apply to schools where they might not have in the past because their ACT or SAT score didn't really
would rule them out, right?
So kids are applying to more schools, which are making the schools look more competitive.
Do you feel like, I feel like this is just untenable, this whole college situation in America? Like, what do you think is the future? Are you getting a sense? I mean, there does seem to be a little bit of a trend, people recognizing more or saying more how important is college. Like, do you think it's going to change in our lifetime?
I think that is changing a little bit. I think we're recognizing that there are career paths for which this is not a necessary piece of paper that you need to have. One of my sons works in tech, and he said that the companies he's worked for have hired many kids out of these tech boot camps. And the kids are completely qualified. I call them kids, that I mean, that they're 20 somethings, totally qualified, have the skills that they need for the job. And these are wonderful, high paying jobs in tech, which great futures and lots of flexibility. And really, they didn't need a college degree. What they needed was the tech training. So I think we're recognizing more and more that there's a lot of skills, whether they be traditional skills that we've thought of as like mechanic and plumbing and things like that, or newer skills that are 21st century skills like coding, that people can find without the college degree. So there's a little bit of a trend away from that. I think the biggest trend, though, and I have to give Frank Bruni a lot of credit for having kicked this off, is he wrote a book called It's Not Where You Go Who Will Determine, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I'm writing it in the chat.
I interviewed him actually about it. It's not where you go, it's who you'll be. Basically, his thesis, which is borne out by a lot of research, is it's what you do in college that matters. As long as you go to, an accredited good university, of which this country has hundreds and hundreds of them all over the country, you will be able to get where you're going. But it's what you do when you get there. So he really pushed that thesis. And I think that's one of the biggest changes in people's thinking.
That's great. I mean, that seems really promising. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal maybe last year about this trend with young men, particularly not wanting to go to college and not thinking it's as necessary. I guess the numbers are really tilting more toward women, right?
Yes, very much so.
What does that say about our
the women having more female graduates than male graduates? That actually started in the 80s. That has been going on for 40 years, but it's only become more acute.
Yeah. There's a question from the audience. I'd love to hear your take about what you learned from the most recent year, this year's current seniors, and how this should inform what we do differently going forward.
What I've learned, I think what we've learned is you have to create a list that has lots of colleges that your student is very, very likely to get into.
Yeah.
We're hearing lots of stories of kids who are very disappointed. I did a live session last night in our membership, and one of the counselors was talking about a student who had applied to 25 schools and has already been rejected by 23. That doesn't mean that it was hard to get into college. That means she applied to the wrong schools.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Well,
the,
that, I guess, to me, that ties into this not requiring the test, because if you don't require the test, then does every kid think she can apply to Brown and Harvard? Like, not every kid should go to Brown or Harvard.
and those schools are actually very, very small and they can't take very many students. So I think if we've learned one thing, we've learned two things, I think, strongly this year. One is the most important part of the process is creating a list that has a bunch of schools that your kid loves and will more than likely get into. They won't get into all of them, but if there are 4 or 5 schools on that list where your kid thinks, you know what, I would be happy there, that's great. And that is the most important part of the list. The important part of the list isn't to find those really difficult to get into schools, pie in the sky that your kid would love to go to. Those are easy to find. And the schools that they're 100% going to get into, but they don't want to go to, those are easy to find too. So if we learn one thing this year, it's find those schools that they can get excited about and they can get into.
It seems like
that's where their choice is going to be. And you really want your kids to have choice if you can.
Yeah. And it seems like from what I see anecdotally among my friends, the problem is often the parents, like it's the parents' expectations. Like I know of a child who didn't get in anywhere this year, and her father was convinced that she'd be able to get into, Georgetown or whatever. And so then, yeah, it's really tricky. It's about setting expectations and realistic expectations.
Which is about us remembering it's their life and not ours.
Exactly.
And you can't say that to yourself too many times. And my children are in their 20s, and I still have to say that to myself pretty regularly. So I think we all have to remember to say it's their life, not ours. The other thing is things have changed, and they've changed a lot. And schools that people weren't rushing to get into when we were college age students, people are rushing to get into.
No, I know, like Northeastern is a good example of that. Like when we were applying to college, even when my oldest daughter, who's 28, was applying, Northeastern was kind of a safety. And now Northeastern is really hard to get into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But some of that is because a school like Northeastern has an amazing job pipeline.
Yeah.
So we need to let go of whatever we thought about from the 90s or whatever fictions or the worst is actually when our parents weigh in. That's actually the worst. Bring your insights from the 1960s to our job search. That's really helpful. Really helpful. So we need to let go of our preconceptions and information that's outdated and things that we're totally wrong about. So like I went to the University of California, which is an amazing place to go to college. The whole UC system is amazing. But now you have to apply to many of the campuses by major, and some of the majors are closed already. And there's just no use going to a college where the major that you want to go to is already closed before you get in.
What does that mean that the major's closed?
You apply into majors. The majors are full. Sometimes they're full.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that was a thing.
And sometimes you can't get the classes you want because the schools are big and they're crowded. And so then you can't graduate in 4 years. If you're doing a major, like an engineering major, which is sequential, and you have to do, A before B, B before C, you can be stuck. So you have to dig deeper. We have to let go of what we thought we knew from past decades and realize it's their job. It's their college search. It will be their job search afterwards. I
think that's a good takeaway, actually, to remind us all that we think we know stuff that's just wrong at this point, that's outdated, that a lot has changed in this landscape. What do you think is the right number of schools to apply to? Audience member says.
Really, really depends on kids. And I am not an expert. I never speak as an expert. So I'm not going to give you, we're seeing kids apply to 10, 12 schools, and most counselors seem happy with that number, that 10, 12 number. But if that 10, 12 number is 10 schools that have admissions rates of less than 10%, you have not applied to 10, 12 schools. So that's why the number of schools doesn't matter.
Yeah,
what matters
it's realistic.
Is that group of schools that your kid likes and they can get into. That is actually the whole, if there's a handful of those, you're probably in good shape. But if you don't have those, you don't have, it doesn't matter.
You could apply 40 schools, exactly, and you're not doing the right thing.
It's not the number of schools.
Another member of the audience is asking about this kind of out of control number. She says, my alma mater received more than 50,000 applications this year compared to 41,000 last year and 33 the year before. Is there any talk among college admission departments about how to calm this madness? That's kind of what I wonder. I really do wonder, like, where is this going? It seems unsustainable. The huge expense of college, it seems like we should have a matching system, more like the New York State schools have, where you choose 10 schools and you rank them and then they just get matched. But is
Yeah.
talk about happening?
What we did with the University of California, when you applied to the University of California, you should rank the campuses. I haven't heard of any suggestions of what anyone's going to do about this. It's important to remember, and there was an article, I think it was the Wall Street Journal last week about this. There are fewer kids applying to college. The numbers are smaller. We have to remember this. There were more kids born in the 90s than the noughts. And there were many, many more kids born in 1992 than 2005, many more. So we're actually seeing fewer kids. We're just seeing them apply to a lot more schools, but they can still only go to one school. So we're a little bit like blinded by these numbers. But
I see numbers themselves. Actually, got it. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And where do you see this business going? Like, what's your personal ambition for this business?
My personal ambitions. That's a tough one. I just want to make this available to as many people as possible. We've just been getting more and more, as we've grown, gotten more and more incredible experts because people are more attracted now to working with us. And I want to do many more specialized sessions. So next month, I have a session on kids with learning differences. We've got an expert now in theater applications because that's it's its own world.
Its own world, conservatory, music, all of that.
Exactly, because there's both an audition and an application. Same thing with athletics. It's like two applications at once when you're trying to go to college as an athlete. So as we grow, I'm able to get more and more specialized content. So I think that'll be more and more useful to parents, because if you have a kid applying as an artist, a musician, an athlete, they need even more help because there's more complexity to their application.
Yeah, well, the whole also D1, D3, there's a lot of complexity. That's interesting. That makes me wonder about your book. I know you guys published a book, which was called, remind me. Grown and Flown. Do you have a college book in the works? It seems like you should.
We don't have a college book in the works. We do have a great resource, actually. Can I add it to you? We had one of our experts. I hope this is helpful to you. We had one of our experts create a timeline that goes from 9th grade to 12th grade. Should I put it in the Q&A or in the chat?
You can put it in the chat. Chat's probably better.
It goes from 9th grade to 12th grade, and it goes through every single thing. It's free. You just download it. You go to that college timeline and just download it off our site. You go through it, what goes through every step of what parents need to do. So one of my goals is to create more and more useful resources like this.
I see. Yeah, it's funny as you say that. It made me think, God, are books, do people feel like these kind of books are outdated? Like, I remember in the 90s, do you remember Let's Go, when we were in the 90s and we were just out of college and we'd go traveling, and Let's Go was like the Bible. Yeah. And I loved when I was applying to schools and my kids were applying to schools using like the FIS guides, or there's that great book of what's that guide called, of colleges you've never heard of that will change lives.
I know who you mean.
It's a wonderful book. It's called something like The Best Colleges You've Never Heard of. So as I listen to you talk about how everything has changed and thinking about all these specific areas like
colleges
theater.
That change lives.
Colleges that change lives. Thank you, Karen. I could really see you doing a book, but you might be right that the better path in today's world is just to keep having an excellent website with updated content all the time. But it seems like what you're doing is super important.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it changes so fast. It's interesting you say the FIS guide. So the FIS guide is a book still, and it's digital. And we're working with them because they love us and we love their book. And so we actually we have a copy for every member who joins our group because they gave us digital copies, and parents like the digital copies better because they can sort and search. And the paper copy, like if you wanted every school with, less than 1,500 students, if you're, it's hard to search and sort.
Oh, it's hard to search. I'm just so old school. I don't read digital books, but okay, I'll forget that question.
No, we do. We do work with FISC, and we did give every member of our group or our membership a copy of it, but it's the digital one now.
All right, that's great to know. Are college tours still as important for admittance? And do legacy admissions still have sway?
Okay, two things. I can't really speak to legacy. We did cover this topic last night in the membership, I will tell you. They are carrying less and less sway, and it's more and more just at the margin when two students look exactly the same. Amherst has just come out and said they will not consider a legacy. That's a school that's very, prestigious, very difficult to get into. I think personally, this is Lisa speaking, just one mom's opinion, that we're going in that direction. That more and more colleges will come out and say that legacy is not a major factor in admissions.
I mean, that seems consistent with kind of the mood in our culture right now, right? That it's elitist, that
Yes.
it favors, that we need to get rid of it. So that actually makes sense. I hadn't thought about that.
It goes against too many other priorities that schools have. Schools have a lot of priorities around diversity. And when I say diversity, I mean geographic diversity, economic diversity, cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, and international diversity. And legacy goes against all of that.
Yeah. And it's just from a fundamental values perspective wrong. It's nepotism, basically. So
exactly. So maybe that tiny bit at the margin, if your kid is so well qualified and looks like the pool, but it is not going to, kids are not by and large just getting in with
or for the person who's donated a gymnasium or whatever, they might have a little bit of edge, but
that's a very small number of people. What was
very small. Say that again.
Tours, I can see tours, super important.
Oh, that's interesting. Why?
They're really important because kids don't really have a sense of a school unless they've really gone to the campus. Now, that having been said, this is a very expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
And so you can do a lot of it online now. There are tours that can be done online. There are websites that are nothing but students guiding you around their colleges and giving you the true sense of what they think. There's one called Campus Real, Campus and then REEL. Just videos made by students about the campus, super helpful. To the extent that you can visit campuses, it's really useful. Kids, all the time we hear the stories of kids going onto campuses they thought they wanted to go to, they get to the campus and they think this is just not me. These kids aren't me, this place isn't me, this isn't me. Or, and I would suggest this to anyone, go see if you can meet with the department where your kid is interested. Go check out the extracurricular things. If your kid is interested in theater or they're interested in sports or they're interested in technology, go look at some of those extracurricular things because that also dissuades students or makes them fall in love with a place. So campus tours are super important, but you can do a lot of it online now. There are information sessions online. There are departmental information sessions online. There are tours online. So you can do all of that without actually going to campus. And one other thing I want to say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a lot to say about college.
No, it's so helpful.
Colleges more and more are looking at something called demonstrated interest. They are tracking your teen to see if your teen is actually really interested in this college. And they track
because people apply to so many schools and the acceptance, the whole yield ratio is impossible.
Exactly. They want to accept kids who want to come there, and you can't blame them. So they track your student in many things they do. I have a post on our website, which is 22 ways to show demonstrated interest. One of our experts wrote 22 ways students do it.
That's a lot of ways.
I know. And some of them are really simple, like opening the emails they send you. They have programs.
That makes sense.
Reading the emails, clicking on the email. Some of them are very simple, but some of them are going to college tours, and you don't have to go on campus. If you go on campus, make sure they know you were there, but some of them are just simply watching the tours online. So another reason why tours are important is it's one way that you are showing a college, your student is showing a college that they care and they're interested.
This is so great, Lisa. All right, so I want to summarize a few of the really important takeaways. One is make sure your kid finds a bunch of schools that they're actually going to get into or probably going to get into. So don't be unrealistic, even if you don't have to take standardized tests, which I think is a real message to parents to convey to kids. The other is how much things have changed from when we were young and how much everything is digitized and how complicated it is and how you need to find the right kind of help that you can afford, which is really challenging, which is why you exist.
And go into it with an open mind to the point of things changing. Open mind about this. These aren't the same schools. These aren't your grandmother's schools or your mother's schools. This is a different world.
Yeah, there's a whole new world out there. Demonstrated interest, campus tours. I love that. 22 ways to show demonstrated interest is awesome. Tell us how people can find you, because I think of you as a Facebook group. So how do people find these services?
So everything about us is Grown and Flown. So grownandflown.com. We have the website. We're Grown and Flown on every social media, Instagram, Twitter,
Okay. Grown
Facebook.
and flown everywhere.
Grown and Flown everywhere. The Facebook group is just called Grown and Flown Parents.
Okay.
And if you're interested in the college admissions thing, I can put that link in there too.
I assume that's easy to find on your website.
Yeah. We're also grownandflown@gmail.com. So you could just email me, grownandflown@gmail.com. You could just email me.
One more good question here. When a school gives a student a financial aid package, is there any room for negotiation?
Yes, there absolutely 100% is. Is that Donna? Donna, actually, I have a post on my website about this. One of my experts wrote about it. I probably can't find it this second. But yes, you can appeal a financial aid offer. You can appeal a merit aid offer. The post talks about how you really need to thank them. You need to explain why you need more, particularly if something's changed. Let them know if there's been a job situation that's changed, something in your finances has changed. If your student has been accepted to another college and they've been more generous, and that is a determining factor in whether your student can go. So I'm just going to make up a case. One school's offered your student $15,000 in merit aid. Another school's offered your student $10,000 in merit aid. For your family, that is a decision-making point. Your student can, or parents is the one place that colleges don't seem to mind if parents get involved, because they know that these issues are bigger than a 17-year-old can handle. You can make it clear to the university in the most polite sort of way that you appreciate what they've offered your student, that your student loves their college, but that they have another offer, and that financial considerations are a major factor for your family. People appeal financial aid offers all the time, and they do get them changed. They don't always get them changed, but they do get them changed.
That's great. That reminds me of another question I have about wait lists, because I hear about so many kids on so many wait lists. How movable are wait lists, and how do you do it?
So wait lists are a bit of a gamble situation, because it has to do with how much yield the college gets. So they may fill their whole class with their accepted, or they may have 20 spaces, or they may have 200 spaces. So some of what happens to your kid is just going to be a result of the yield that the college got, and no one can predict that until May 1st. So May 1st is National Decision Day. Honestly, most of these colleges, when they go to their wait list, they go to their wait list like May 2nd and May 3rd. They know right away whether they're going to need students or not.
Ah, interesting. So is it a case where it sometimes happens in August? Like, do people?
It can, because people can change their minds and places open up. It can happen anytime all summer long. There's a big rush right after May 1st. But one of the things your student can do is tell the college that they are very interested. They can write an email. This the student needs to do, not the parent. The only place it seems that colleges are happy to deal with parents is around money, because these are big numbers for a teenager. The student needs to write a letter and say anything that's changed since their application went in. So things have changed. They may have gotten awards. They may have had something happen that didn't make the application, because the application might have gone in last December. So anything that's changed on their application. And if that is a school that if they got off the wait list, they would definitely attend. They can tell the school that. They can say, if I am removed, if I'm taken off your wait list, I will matriculate.
Yep.
Because again,
it's demonstrated interest, and you have to really show them. They need to know.
Colleges are like everybody. Everybody wants to know that they're picked, and that they're,
Yeah, and also if you've put whatever 400 people on wait lists, you need to know who really wants to go to your school on that wait list. But can you annoy them too much if you're too aggressive? Like, how aggressive can you be?
I can. So I think and again, I'm not a college counselor.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of college counselors telling people to write more than one email. I think it's an email expressing continued interest. You only say that you'll matriculate if that is absolutely the truth. That if this will let you in, you would push the button the minute that email came in. You would be done.
Right.
Students shouldn't say things like that. If there's not 100% certainty around it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this is great. I've always been very fond of you, and I'm just super impressed that you're doing this, because it feels like a really affordable option. I mean, you say it's roughly $25 a month for lots of resources, places you can ask questions, real experts you can talk to through this period, which is really challenging for lots and lots of people. And I do feel kind of morally opposed to this like super expensive racket of college advisors. So I think this is the way it should go.
Yeah.
Someone just
we pay our experts. So, I obviously have to charge because
yeah.
I'm asking people who have a lot of expertise in this field to give us their time to answer questions, to do live sessions.
Of
So,
course. And you're also paying your writers, which is really great. So someone in the audience says, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. I'm literally doing a self-guided tour at San Diego State University with my kids right now while listening to this call. I've found that in-person tours are hard to get into, so plan way ahead. Thank you, Victoria. That's helpful.
They are, Victoria, they're really hard to get into. There's fewer of them. Some colleges aren't having a lot of them because of COVID, but a way around that sometimes is find out whether your student knows anybody who went to that college. Parents come into Grown and Flown all the time and say, does anybody have a student who I can give $25 to, and they'll take us on a tour of the college? And parents offer their kids up. You often don't even have to offer them anything, but if you offer a kid $20 for an hour of their time, they'll probably do it.
Yeah.
Or go to your high school and have your student ask their college counselor, who from our high school went to this college last year, and just reach out to them. You're 1 year behind them in school. You went to the same high school. Have them text the kid or email the kid and say, my dad and I are touring your campus. Would you take us around for a little while? Kids are happy to. They love their colleges. They're so happy to show family. So if you can't get an organized tour, try and get one from somebody that your team might know.
That's a great idea. And for Cecilia, who joined late and said, what is $25 a month? We're in conversation with Lisa Heffernan, co-founder of Grown and Flown. And Grown and Flown offers a really wonderful, affordable college process program.
Membership. Yeah, it's a membership working with, so I'm just want to make sure. Yeah, it's $25 a month if you do it for 6 months. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that I had
it's a membership program where people can meet with college advisors and get advice, and it's much more reasonable. And for a lot of people whose choice is between their college advisor of their large public high school or nothing, this is a really great alternative to get. And it's a place where you can also forum where you can go and ask other people questions, which I think is super important in this process, and get reliable.
And we spend a lot of time on the paying for college piece, because that's paramount.
So complicated and important. So exactly. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you for our participants. It's lovely to see you. And I look forward to seeing you in
Nina, thank you so much. This was such fun. You've got a great audience.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Lisa. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.